Hey everybody, welcome back to Freedom Wanderer. I'm Chuck McDonald and I'm so happy you are here with me. So today we're going to do something a little bit different. Haven't been able to do any great adventures. The weather's been bad. Some vehicles have been broken down. School has started. We've got tons of reasons, but anyway, still want to talk to you guys and share with you guys some things that I did back in the day. So hang on, hang tight, and let's get started. Okay, everybody, welcome and thank you for hanging out with me. I appreciate it. I love you guys hanging out with me. Without you, there's really not a channel. So today, sitting out on my back porch, enjoying the outside. It's a little bit cooler this morning. It's a lot quieter this morning, and I really enjoy it. And you can maybe hear some animals in the background. I hear the squirrels and the birds kind of chirping, and I enjoy stuff like that. It's kind of peaceful back here. That's why I sit out on the back porch and enjoy the backyard. So anyway, today, let's talk about something a little bit different. Okay, I haven't been able to go on a whole lot of adventures, haven't been able to get into a lot of stuff and video a lot of stuff because of weather and school and different things happening. So I started thinking about what did I want to talk to you guys about. So today, I want to tell you guys my personal top 5 scuba dives I've ever been on. Okay, all right, now that's going to be different for everybody. Scuba diving is just like any other recreational sport or anything else. We all have our opinions. We all have what we like, what we don't like. Okay, these are just my 5 personal. I know I talk about scuba diving a lot, and one day I'll take the GoPro and take you guys on one of these adventures with me. Okay, so let's get started. Number 5. Let me preface all this by saying it would be impossible to do a top 10 or a top 20 because me personally, I love scuba diving anywhere, anytime. I love getting in the water. I love the peace and quiet. I love being able to see what other people don't get to see. So let me preface that to start off with. My favorite type of diving is wreck diving, and we do have some wrecks that are on this list. But number 5 to start off with is a place called Blue Grotto. Blue Grotto is a cavern spring in the northern part of Florida. Okay, it's right outside of a little small town called Williston, Florida. It's about 100 feet deep, according to how the water level works out. But and it's a cavern, and the great thing about the cavern is you never lose natural light. So you can go inside and feel safe without having to feel like you're in a cave, claustrophobic. You can't see any light, can't see any way out. None of that stuff happens, okay? So, and it's basically a horseshoe shape, meaning that you can kind of go down one side, make the turn, and come back up the other side. Now, it is still dangerous. I don't prescribe that it's easy or fun in the way that you're an adventure seeker and you want to see how close to death you can get. It can still be very dangerous. At the bottom can get silted up if you're not careful, and you can lose that natural light and get yourself in a lot of trouble, and you would have to drink a lot of water if you get in trouble, right? So it's a great dive. It's a great experience without having to be a cave diver. You probably do need to be certified as a cavern diver, but to dive there you don't necessarily have to be. There is some wildlife there. There's a turtle with a nickname. I can't remember the name, but there's some other things that go on. There's also what's called a dive bell inside of it. So when you get down to about 25-30 feet under one of the ledges, there's an air pocket that was man-made. Air is pumped into it. You can go up inside of it. You can take your regulator off. You and your buddies can have a good laugh. You can put your regulator back in, and then you can continue your dive on down. So Blue Grotto, I highly recommend. Okay, number 4. This is a little different. I love the ocean. Okay, so I love diving in the ocean. And one of the places I got to go early when I started diving is down in the Keys. It's called John Pennekamp Reserve. It's actually a reef system, one of the biggest in the world. It's not the biggest, one of. And it's beautiful and it's protected, and it should be, because tourists and some people just don't care about that stuff, right? That's me ranting a little bit. But listen, it's got a reef system down there, and there's some beautiful diving down in the Keys, beautiful clear water, shallow water if you want to get into, or deep water. Well, there's a statue down there called the Christ of the Abyss. Okay, so it's like this 7 or 8 foot statue, kind of like the picture you see of the statue of Jesus in, I think it's Brazil, on top of the hill, but this is a smaller version. And a local artist wanted to, I think he was an artist, I would have to check into that, but anyway, it's not about that. He built this statue, wanted to put it out in to kind of remember all of those lost at sea. Okay, so, and the reason I like it, well, first of all, I'm Christian, I love Jesus, but second of all, when you're reef diving, you kind of get lost in just the reef system. It kind of breaks the monotony of that. And it's real beautiful, and where it's located is just so awesome. It's just surrounded by reefs, and you can see snorkelers and free divers coming in from the top, wanting to come down and touch this statue and go up. It's a beautiful place, beautiful dive. I highly recommend. Right outside of Key Largo is where we left out of, on the Atlantic side, down into John Pennekamp Reserve. It's a dive called the Christ of the Abyss. Very beautiful dive. Alright guys, once again I want to thank Slenderize for being our presenting sponsor for this video. Slenderize, 100% organic homeopathic drops. They're not pills, tablets, anything like that. They're drops you put under your tongue 10 minutes before each meal, 3 times a day. It helps the pounds fall off. It helps balance your hormones. A lot of people call them skinny drops. A lot of people are seeing amazing results. So there's a link in the description below. Go get your Slenderize. Use the promo code CHUCK91 at checkout, and you can get a 15% discount. Go get yours today. Let's start getting those pounds off. Thank you, Slenderize, for being our presenting sponsor. Now, let's get back to the video. Okay, number 3. Okay, everybody knows I love the ocean. Everybody knows I love wreck diving. So, of course, my top 3 are going to be wrecks. And so, there are different types of wrecks. There are artificial reefs, which are intentionally sank or sunk. We say sunk in the South, but sank to create a reef, a decommissioned ship or what have you, that will create an ecosystem for fish to live in. And so the next one, continuing with being down in the Keys, one of the other dives I went on right outside of Key Largo is a dive called the Duane. The Duane was a Coast Guard cutter. Now, if you've seen pictures of the Coast Guard or watched movies about the Coast Guard or seen anything about the Coast Guard, there's always this ship with that beautiful red stripe on the front with their logo, anything. That's called a cutter. Okay, that's their ship that they use to do their jobs, right? One of the ships they use. So this was an old Coast Guard cutter that they decided to make an artificial reef, meaning it was sank on purpose. They brought it out to a certain spot, blew a couple of holes in it, watched it sink. So now it sits right outside of Key Largo, Florida, in 120 feet of water, which means the bottom sits at 120 feet, and then the towers and the conning towers and all the other stuff are roughly 70 to 80 feet. So you've got a good range. You can dive in if you're advanced or not. That's another video. Man, I've been all the way to the bottom, and I took my gauge and I put it in the sand to make sure I was at 120 feet, because that was one of the first deep dives that I was ever on. Now, not just the deepness of the dive is not what I love about it. I love wreck diving. It is a beautiful, I mean, like when you're coming down, the anchor line to go to the wreck, and this big vessel just comes and gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and you get closer and closer until finally you can reach out and touch it, and it's massive and it's long, and you're underwater and you're looking at this, and they on purpose open certain places where you can swim through without losing light and not like getting down into the belly of the ship and getting lost, or being a not so smart diver. Okay, so there's a lot of swim throughs. There's as you swim through and you see the gauges and the levers, and just you realize people actually worked on this ship, and so that's the history buff in me coming out. That's why I love wreck diving. And so I really, really enjoy it. If you want a good deep dive with some good clear water, usually, the ocean does what the ocean wants to do. But usually very clear. The last time I dove on it, I could see the sand from the buoy at the top. I mean, it was just crystal clear water. It was a beautiful day. The divers that were there with us and on the boat, we were having an absolute blast. So anyway, the Dwayne, Key Largo, Florida, number 3. All right, so now number 2. So this is where the history buff in me comes out. Number 1 and number 2 really are pretty much a tie. Number 1 is a little bit different for a different reason, and I'll tell you why. So number 2, okay, so off the coast here in South Carolina, we have a lot of shipwrecks, okay? We do have artificial reefs that are out there, and lots of them, because without them, we're just sandy bottom off the coast of the Carolinas, right? So there are some natural wrecks out there that history decided to sink a ship, right? Okay, the ocean decided to take one. So there's a dive called the Copper Pots, and we called it the Copper Pots for years and years and years. If you ever get to see it, it's just like 2 copper boilers. Now back in the day, they had steamships had boilers, right? So they had these 2 boilers made out of copper, and when they were found, they kind of lay across each other. It's a beautiful dive. I mean, just a lot of sea life out there, plenty of fish in the water column. It's kind of cool to go see the history of it, because nobody for a long time knew what it was. We knew they were boilers, knew they were copper. I say we, but divers, we understood the history of it. But we didn't know how they got there. Was this a shipwreck? Was this something that fell off of a barge? Did aliens drop it off? I mean, like, we didn't have a clue. Well, I can't remember the year, but way back in the day, about 20 years ago or so, I can't remember the exact date, they actually found the Civil War ship, the North Carolina. And so what had happened was the North Carolina had copper boilers, which was a rarity in those days. And so what had happened was the North Carolina was coming from up north. I hope I get my directions right. From up north, was coming down to Charleston basically during the Civil War, was coming to bring, supplies for the war down to Charleston. So this boat was just loaded with artifacts. Got somehow, I think it was a storm, caused it caught fire, yada yada yada. So what happens is the ship rolled over, so the 2 boilers came out, and the ship sank 150-ish feet away. So from the boilers to the ship is just a debris field. Now, a Civil War wreck in the 1800s, 1800s, whatever it was. When we dive, those things have been time and salt water and sand and storms have covered most of that up, and so you never really saw anything but the boilers, which was cool. For me, as a history buff, diving on a Civil War wreck, that was just the coolest thing. Now, over time, they did bring, somebody got the salvage rights to it. They pretty much came in and took everything off of it, got millions and millions of dollars in Confederate coins and artifacts like muskets and buttons off of coats and different things like that. But for me personally, it was a great wreck, a great dive, fun to go out on. I enjoy the history of stuff like that. I've seen something that very few people on the planet have ever seen, and that's what I enjoy about those kind of wrecks. So number 2, the Copper Pots, or the North Carolina, if you look it up now, it may be the North Carolina Civil War wreck off of the coast of Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. Okay, so finally, number one, you guys ready for number 1? Okay, so again, we're going to talk about a shipwreck, a natural shipwreck. This was not something that was sank on purpose. Let me just tell you the history of it. So number 1, it's a wreck called the Hebe, H-E-B-E. Okay, so off the coast of Myrtle Beach here in South Carolina. I keep pointing this way because the ocean's that way, okay? That's east. So off the coast of South Carolina here, they found a shipwreck that sank in 1942. It's called the Hebe, H-E-B-E. It was a Dutch merchant ship that was bringing wine. It was covered in wine bottles, little green pesticide bottles, and some other things. I forgot what the other one was. But mostly what we find nowadays, you can still find bottles, big brown wine bottles, and when you turn it upside down, it's got Dutch writing, the number 42 from the year. You can still find pesticides bottles. Most of those things that we found when we went, my uncle keeps in a little display, so it's really, really cool. But it is a natural wreck. So what happened in World War II, 1942 we're talking about, they had blackout conditions, meaning you're trying to be stealthy. So 2 ships collided, one being the Hebe, one being a British subchaser called the St. Cathan. And so they hit, and they both sank. I think it's like a quarter of a mile apart. They sank. The Hebe on one side, the St. Cathan on the other. And the St. Cathan is a beautiful dive if you ever want to go. The reason the Hebe is my number 1 over all those other wrecks is that's the first wreck dive, the first ocean dive, the first deep dive I ever did. So it's special to me because it was first. So as a young scuba diver, getting certified, becoming advanced open water, wanting to do all these fun things right, we go out in the ocean. It's my uncle and myself, and we're on a buddy's boat, so we drop anchor. And so the visibility that day, it sits in about 80 feet of water, 80-ish feet of water, 90, I've heard. It's according to what the tides are. But so visibility wasn't the greatest that day, so it wasn't like you could stick your face in the water and see it down below you. So my first time in the ocean, we're going to tie the anchor off so that we don't drift off. So I'm following my uncle down the anchor line. So I tell people I kind of have tunnel vision in this moment, right? Because it's my first time in the ocean. That's a lot of water to drink if problems happen. So we go down, I find my uncle, we kind of get together, we find a nice little rock, we tie the anchor line off, and my uncle gives me the signal, let's go this way. So after I look at my uncle, I look back, and there it is. The bow of the boat sitting listed over on its port side right in front of me. You know, I'm kind of knelt down in the sand because we're tying the anchor line off to make sure our boat is safe. And the thought hit me right in that moment. I've only seen this on TV. So instantly, as you know, as you can tell, I was hooked. I was hooked on wreck diving. I was hooked on ocean diving. I've been able to see things a lot of people on this planet have not, and I do not take that lightly. I'm very grateful. It is very fun. The Hebe is a beautiful dive. It has degraded a lot over the years. Saltwater does that. storms come through, a lot of people try to go diving because it uncovers the bottles and dishes and different things. I've even got a soap dish off of it that I keep in my little collection, and a piece of elbow iron, or it's not angle iron, it's actually pretty long, for a shelf. It was a bracket for a shelf. And so found those things laying in the sand, and I know a lot of people have issues with that. This was done a long time ago in the mid 90s, okay, and that was before all the before it got real stirred up about not messing with natural wrecks. I get it. It is a grave site. It's not listed as a grave site, but people did die in this accident, both from Britain and from the Dutch, and so I get it. I get it. I didn't go plundering and digging. These things were just laying there, were able to be found, and I've got them, and they're cool for me. I mean, just for me to see and remember, and all those things. So anyway, those are my top 5. Okay, listen guys, I hope you enjoyed that. I appreciate you sticking around this long. If you're a scuba diver out there, give me a list of your favorite dives down below. It doesn't matter what it is: cavern diving, cave diving, shore diving, shallow diving, deep diving. Let me know what your favorites are. I'd really like to know, because maybe one day I could go check them out. So anyway, love you guys. Appreciate you guys. I really thank you for watching, liking, commenting, sharing, and subscribing, all those things. It blows my mind. I appreciate it, and we'll see you guys next time.